So you got a little bit of the behind the scenes there. But thank you all so much for joining us for another episode of Everything Happening This Week in EOS. There is a lot of good news, a lot of stuff to discuss. And of course, if you didn't already know, yesterday was a very, very special day in that it was the 1 year anniversary of the EOS Mainnet actually unlocking. Now, of course, the EOS Mainnet was stood up. It was launched a couple weeks before that, sort of at the beginning of June of last year. But this unlock event, which was June 14th, 2018, was when we all came together. We hit that 15% threshold where 15% of everybody had voted for block producers, and we were able to unlock the mainnet. So pretty historic day. We've made it 1 year. Zach, what do you think about this?
I thought the coolest part
in.
was, so I actually didn't know about the event until EOS Authority put out a tweet. And in their tweet, they put up a link. I don't think you could see it up on the screen because I'm not sharing it with you, but I have eosauthority.com/schedule_first. They have like the original block producer rankings, and it was nice to kind of reminisce about. Oh crap! I have the. Why don't you carry this for a second, and I'll get your face back in there. These are growing pains, everybody. You guys are seeing it raw.
You are in the world. It could be later. It could be night. But let us know in the chat. Somebody says, my audio is breaking up and distorted. Oh, nice now that you're in stereo, though. Okay, let us know if it's still working.
I think
still got the audio going. Obviously, we've got a new
really
setup here.
On mine. Could
Okay.
someone
That's
in
probably
the
'cause
chat
I'm so
verify
excited.
that our audios are kind of sounding the same now? Why don't you do a test, Rob? Test. People are getting it, Rob. Yeah, because I'm looking at the bars on mine. Mine aren't going up nearly as much. Are you able to turn your mic down by any chance?
Oh, yeah. Give me 1 sec. If you want to talk about
anyway,
the
EOS Authority link, that was my thing, was just kind of reminiscing about the top 21 on the first Genesis block. And also another fun fact is that someone asked on Twitter, and I answered the question, EOS Sweden was actually the first block producer to produce a block when the EOS mainnet unlocked. So if anyone was wondering that, now you know. And as in case anyone forgot, Cypherglass actually was number 12 during the launch of the mainnet. Are you looking at the list on your screen, Rob?
Do you remember?
It's.
Yeah, I see it up right now. Do you remember when we were doing the podcast live when the mainnet unlocked?
So
more than
it
a
was
year ago
when
now?
we were doing the audio version, and we basically just had to cut it off short. So we've had a couple. This is one of the more interesting episodes. That was one of the more interesting episodes. This one's as raw as it's gonna get, because I'm gonna be continuing to check in the chat of if we're running into any technical issues. So if anything happens with the sound or anything, just let us know in the chat. We both have our live chats up. So let me hop into the next topic here. So next topic's you, Rob. So you had a pretty important AMA yesterday. I'm gonna pull the let's see if I can get the live chat up on the screen here, and then hello EOS stuff.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this. Yeah, so I sat down with, I'm going to butcher his name here, but Zyken effectively is how Americans pronounce it, but I'll get it correct in the intro to the Hello EOS AMA. But we sat down, we talked about a lot of different stuff. A ton of people submitted questions on Twitter about, honestly, mostly the current state of governance on the chain. And I think the most mind-blowing part about the Hello EOS AMA to me was that it really is an Occam's razor-like situation. And Occam's razor is generally that the simplest answer, the simplest explanation to a problem is generally the correct one. And in this case, I think it's probably the same with the vote rankings right now. And that simple explanation is the reason why these people in China are not voting for any, or really maybe other than EOS New York, aren't voting for any Western VPs, is because they simply don't speak English. A lot of their community doesn't speak English at all. They have no idea what we're doing. So they're really in the same position as we are, where when we look across the world and we go, oh, what are these guys doing over there? We have no idea the value that they're adding. And vice versa, they're looking at us going, what are these Westerners doing? We have no idea what what value they're adding to the chain. So it was really awesome. We'll have that out early this upcoming week, where you can watch the whole AMA. It's about an hour long. Edited down might be a little bit shorter.
I thought it was pretty cool with people in the chat, because everyone had a lot of questions. So
go ahead.
You haven't published this yet. I haven't gotten the push notification for it yet. But there were some really interesting questions we were seeing. People were like, is there a Kevin Rose in China? Is there a Rob Finch in China? Is there an Everything EOS in China? Were you able to ask any questions like that of who their, I guess, like top communication leaders are over there?
Yeah, and I'm just turning down my volume a bit. Yeah, they actually mentioned a lot. There was somebody from Startio, somebody from Who.com, from a couple different entities that I wasn't expecting. So they definitely have their version of this in China. Maybe not the exact same show, but they very much have leaders in China that are sort of leading that community, similar to how us and maybe EOS New York and some of these other people are sort of the faces in the media to lead the people in the West. So it was pretty cool. Very, very eye-opening interview, and I think it really should give people an idea of why the rankings are how
like
they
what
are.
was the biggest takeaway that you learned from it that kind of we can bridge the gap? Is there more collaboration we could do? Because I think it sounds like a big communication problem. Because did you get a chance to watch my conversation with Equilibrium from this past weekend? I posted it earlier this week.
No, I haven't yet. I think I've seen the first 10 or 15 minutes where you guys all did the intro. And then
I mean, they were saying the same thing. It's like they're just doing so much work over in China. We just don't know about it here. And I guess a lot of the people that were at Tulip got to meet them. And they're at B1 June too. I met some people. I met the Startios team. The girl was really nice from there. And she was telling me what they were doing. And like they are doing a lot of stuff. So what's the solution though?
Yeah.
Because
honestly, I think the solution is just more communication. There have been other initiatives in the past where it was like, oh, we're going to, send news from China over to the Western world and vice versa, from the Western world to the Eastern world. And I think a lot of those initiatives have kind of died out or maybe weren't taken to the full extent. So I really think there's an opportunity for us here at Everything EOS to help. Maybe we spin up an entirely new show with Chinese hosts that we sort of integrate into our show. We have a lot of ideas on how we might sort of bridge this gap more and really give people in the East an insight into what we're doing in the West, while also giving people in the West an insight to what is happening in the East. So I'm super excited about it. Zack and I talked off camera. We'll have more details to share on that in the coming weeks, but all good things. And speaking of Cypherglass stuff as well, we just announced that partnership with Morpheus Labs. They're a blockchain platform as a service company, but essentially our partnership really extends around education. So we're going to be using the Everything EOS developer courses to educate more developers how to build on EOSIO and inevitably how to build on the EOS Mainnet. So we're super excited about that.
Just looking at the thing.
Should be a
People
good
are
time.
saying you're still really loud. I lowered it on my end. I tried seeing if that helped. In the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So right now is the
chat
actual start time. We were supposed to start at 11, so we kind of got a slow start into this. I'm just going through. So you had the Morpheus stuff. How that get started? Because I kind of have an idea. I talked to Adriana a little bit. So your community manager's basically been living in Asia for the last couple weeks, or if not longer. And I kind of forgot about that. You told me a long time ago, but until this news came out with Morpheus, and I joined their channel and saw it was heavily Asian. So how'd that all get started, and what's the next steps for that?
Yeah, so it all got started through Adriana, who, like you said, is now living in Asia. She's, I believe, sort of based in Thailand, but has been popping around to all kinds of different countries. She was in Bali recently. It's pretty amazing. She really is becoming this like global world traveler. And I think her plan in the long term is actually to stay maybe 6 months out of every year over in Thailand and maybe do the other 6 months in Puerto Rico or something like that. But essentially, long story short, she ended up linking up with the Morpheus Labs people, found out about what they had going on, and sort of went, oh, wow, you guys are trying to teach your developers how to build on EOS. I have the perfect partner for you. It's Cypherglass and the Everything EOS developer.
Someone in the chat just said I look sad. I'm not sad. I'm just tired, guys. Like what you're seeing on the screen is very painstaking for what you actually see. Actually, is a lot more simple than the work that went into it to try to get this to work. Like the same reason our audio keeps clipping and going through all kinds of stuff. This is just growing pains. I'm just trying to not mess up the software because like yesterday we had to cancel and reschedule the show. And it's also morning. So usually whenever we record this show, it's like we had some time to have some caffeine in us. I'm on my very first Monster. So this is probably the most tired you ever see me, but it's probably a good thing because I've been told I have a reputation in the Asian community, Rob. Did I tell you about this? So the people in the Asian community who do watch our show, they think we just get all hopped up on cocaine before we record. I mean, I'm hoping it was a joke. So, no, of course it's not.
That's not happening.
I think it was a joke, but it was in the main channel and someone said that, and I was like, no, man, we just get hyped up for the show. And then I met Bo from EOS Studio in San Fran, and April for the World Expo, and he said the same thing. He's like, I was expecting you to be all like enthusiastic and hyper. I'm like, yeah, maybe I could turn that on for about an hour, but that's not. And yeah, and I am a perfectionist. Thanks, JFlow. And everyone gets to be on the screen now too, which I like that, because this is all about community. Like, we do the show because we want to grow the community, and we saw the fruits of our labor at the EE31 May event. And I mean, we see it every day in the Everything EOS channel, which, by the way, if you're not in the Telegram channel, I highly recommend you take a look at it. It's t.me/everything EOS. We got some fancy graphics popping up. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, we also have a graphic for that. So that's at Everything EOSIO on Twitter. So I'm just trying out some of my new stuff. Monsters are quite bad for your heart. Thanks, Ben Choi. Appreciate the health advice. They are probably bad for my heart, but I can't get out of the bed in the morning without them. So unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. Yeah, this is definitely the least hypey video for me. I'm like, just like, I have like 3 monitors in front of me and a second laptop trying to get this thing to work. So I asked you to carry it a little bit more than usual today, Rob, and I want you to talk about the EOS wallet, because I know you're very excited about that. I just popped up a preview of your video on the screen. You just did a video on it. You've been a big proponent of EOS. Just tell me about this video of this early release and what's to come.
Yeah, so if you don't know about EOS already, you can check out this video on the Cypherglass channel. Just search EOS Wallet Preview on YouTube and you'll find it. But essentially, they're trying to make private and untraceable transactions on EOS. And the reason why I'm so excited about this, beyond just honestly believing that privacy is a fundamental human right, is that I really think EOS has the potential to kind of be this private ecosystem on EOS where dApps can integrate with it, and you'll have all kinds of different privacy-related services sort of still built on EOS, which is pretty amazing. So Mel from EOS, who is sort of the project lead over there, I obviously don't know, who the team actually is, but Mel in Telegram was kind enough to send me a preview video of their upcoming wallet. So we saw a teaser screenshot a few weeks ago, and now we got this actual teaser video, which was so awesome to see because it really shows the hard work and the, I think a lot of the skill that this team does possess. Obviously, we don't know who they are, but they clearly have UI skill, they have UX skill. They made a very, very good user experience that makes a process of anonymizing coins that on other blockchains can actually be quite complex and quite user unfriendly into a process that literally just takes 1 to 2 clicks. So I'm super excited about it. The actual EOS code should be out on the testnet this month, according to the white paper, and then we'll get it on the mainnet next quarter by the end of September. So a lot of good things happening. I'm super excited about it. Just search EOS Wallet Preview on YouTube if you want to check out that video.
So did you get a chance to see the EOS writer put out an article? It says 6 hours ago. I have it up on the screen here, where Dan's investigating 200% decentralized social media networks. So we've speculated a little bit. It's like an open secret that everyone thinks Dan is Mel, and because everyone thinks that, it's probably not. Right. But us, we love to dream and speculate on things. So did you get a chance to go through everything he said on Telegram? And if you haven't, maybe we could dive into it if the screen's synced up on your end. Are you able to see what I see?
Yeah, let's dive into it. I haven't read the full post. I saw that similar headline, though, about him,
So basically, this is just what's going on. I mean, beyond the privacy solutions, it's just the communication is on point. And a lot of people, I guess mostly outside of the EOS community, you can complain all you want about like all the fudders and stuff, but like there's no other company like this where the top tier management is such great communicators. If you go into the Ethereum community, do you really think Vitalik is going into the chats and communicating with people? I don't even know if there's an official Ethereum. I mean, there's not an official EOS channel either. It's community driven, but I don't even know what the main Ethereum channel is. And I was in that whole run through 2017. Like, do you remember there being like an Ethereum Telegram and who the leaders were in it?
No, I don't. I know that every ICO obviously had their own Telegram. That's probably where we were living during that time, but I don't remember one for Ethereum. I'm sure there is.
The thing that stood out for me was Dan here on the screen. It says Sam from Everpedia. He said he wanted to know what type of contracts people were making for EOS VM, which is what we're all waiting for with. Do you know if EOSIO 2 is going to come at the same time as EOS VM, or is EOS VM going to come first?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if one is dependent on the other or not, but I know that first we have to get 1.8 in because that's what requires the coordination amongst all
Hmm.
the block producers and full nodes and things like that. So we got to get that out of the way, and then we can focus on 2.0
But
with everything
so
else that comes before it.
this information stood out with the bounty. Let me get it up on the screen here, because basically he wants to put out these bounties for the smart contracts, which is really cool because it ties into something that Dan said the other day. So Dan's talking about putting out bounties because we need the first bit of code to come out for the EOS VM because it's going to be a little bit more complicated for developers, actually. And that's what he said in our podcast was he has to make sure that when this stuff comes out, it's not just like user-friendly for the user, but it's got to be user-friendly for the developers too. And that was a big reason he was holding back. Not holding back, I'm sure it's a technological issue too, but with like the multi-threading. When you add multi-threading into the mix, it gets a lot more complicated. But I like that he's discussing a bounty. So that means that at Block.One, they're actively at least talking about these ideas of putting out bounties. So whenever the mainnet launched, we were all expecting the worker proposal system to kick off. Like once the chain launched, we were going to have that in place, and that was going to pay for community-driven things that weren't necessarily going to bring profits. And that never came to fruition for pretty good reasons too. But without that, we're kind of hamstrung with budgeting of how do we build things that benefit the community but don't necessarily bring profits to the company that does it. And we saw amazing. I'm looking at chat. We saw amazing development with things like the referendum. Like that was all community driven. It was all paid for by the block producers. But that just brings us to the other issue of the block producers is with the rankings all leaning so heavily towards Asia. It's not a bad thing. It's great for Asia, but for us in the Western world, the tools that we were looking to build, the funding's not as strong for the block producers because of the lower rankings. So if someone used to be in the top 21, they were getting that kicker. So you want to just remind everyone how the block rewards work. So if you're in the top 21, you get a kicker vote amount. I'm not sure how many EOS it is, but then everything else is stake weighted.
Right. So if you're in the top 21, you get what's called block pay. So everybody in the top 21 gets the same amount of block pay every day just for producing blocks. I believe if you miss, a bunch of blocks, you don't get paid for those, which is the way it should be. But in addition to that, the top 21 and everybody below the top 21 down to a certain threshold, I think it's somewhere in the 80s, they get what's called vote pay. So when I say things like, hey, vote for Cypherglass, every vote, gives us more resources to reinvest into the EOS ecosystem, it actually is true. Based on the number of votes you have, the total percent of votes being voted that go to you as a block producer, you actually get paid more. So we at Cypherglass survive entirely on vote pay since we're not in the top 21 at the moment. So the more you vote for us, even if it's only 5 EOS tokens that you have in your wallet, those 5 EOS directly impact the amount of money we make. So it's a really cool system, I think, to help keep the standby BPs incentivized and encourage us to go out and get more votes.
So what is the kicker for the top 21? How many EOS is that for being in the top 21? Okay. So BitSchool just made a pretty good mention. So he thinks the bounty should be putting the Ethereum virtual machine inside an EOS smart contract or using the EOS VM. But the reason I brought up this bounty is because Dan brought it up. We know that it's at least being talked about at Block.One to do these bounty programs. And it reminded me of a tweet that or not a tweet, a Telegram message that Dan posted that we didn't get a chance to talk about last week on the podcast. And that was about the hackathons and how it seems like they're kind of reimagining them a bit. So I'll read the message here. So Mark Woods asked about the hackathons. Mark Woods helped us. He helps us out with everything EOS. He's one of our moderators, helped us at EE31 May. But he asked Dan and Brendan, at B1 June, there was a whole section dedicated to the hackathon series, which was an amazing experience for all involved, but no other comments about future hackathon series. And then he asked if there was going to be more. And this is a question that's come up a lot in the community is, are we going to have more hackathons? Because that was one of the most eye-opening experiences I saw in the EOS ecosystem. Partly because it was the first in-person event I was at for EOS, but they were just amazing. And the only thing that really topped it was B1 June. So Dan's response to that was, we are working on redesigning hackathons. My opinion is that the next hackathon should be global, X Prize style, ending with a major dev conference where judging occurs. But that is just one idea of many proposed. Give teams longer times to work on defined problems rather than shorter times to work on undefined problems. And I think that's a great idea. So what that would basically allow is typically with these hackathons, they occur over a weekend. So you have maybe 24 to 36 hours to actually build something. And you don't actually know the topic or the category for the projects until the actual event starts. So you're limited in the problems you're able to solve in a 36-hour window. And not everyone's walking home with a prize, so they're not going to continue work on their projects. Are you familiar with what X Prize is, Rob, by chance? All right, so I'm gonna pull it up on the screen here to give an example to the audience. I am vaguely familiar with it because I was at a startup helping them out for a time where we were actually we had a grant for this $5 million. We didn't have $5 million. We had a grant that was to try to compete for the $5 million IBM Watson AI prize. We were using like wearable technology trying to detect people that were close to having an opiate relapse. So it'd like monitor their stress levels through their watches and use AI to determine whether or not they're likely to relapse. So that's how I became familiar with X Prize. But just looking at these prizes on their website here, I think it's up on the screen, yeah. So there's a $5 million prize for challenging teams to develop how humans can collaborate with powerful AI. There's a $20 million prize for reducing carbon, $15 million for empowering children. So it's like bigger ideas. So they did one for space flight or something, but they're like in the millions of dollars. They're really big, and there's dozens of teams usually competing for them. So what happens here is it's a different model than the hackathon, because whenever you have a $5 million prize, everyone thinks they're the best at what they do. So they're actually investing money into building these solutions for this $5 million prize. So imagine if like there's a Cypherglass team fighting for this $5 million prize, and EOS New York team fighting for this prize, or collaborating, let's say, and then EOS Authority. You're all willing to put hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, into this investment because you're like, I'm going to get this $5 million prize. And then what ends up happening in these X Prize competitions is more money is actually spent in R&D and development than what the actual prize is, because the prize is $5 million. But if you have like 10 teams investing like $2 million each, you actually get investment into the community and into the development of whatever this solution is. And then everyone that's like X Prize is different than open source software, but the way I would see it working with EOSIO would be, I think you'd have a lot of teams collaborating. Like you could have every team collaborating and really not a whole lot of competition, or you could have like 2 or 3 like heavyweight teams where it's like a collaboration of like BPs and devs in the community. They would all help each other for these big prizes. But I think that would be awesome, because that's going to get us bigger solutions than what we've previously seen with the hackathons. And that's not to say that the hackathon projects aren't great. We saw Team Nougat, what they did, and I think what they're building could actually work into this global hackathon X Prize type thing, because if you're developing code, each contributor could actually get a mini bounty for each individual feature within this bigger X Prize competition. So it would be actually paid out like as you go on a feature by feature basis potentially. But I don't know what their intentions are there. I just wanted to bring this up because I really want hackathons to come back. I wish I could have went to more last year, and I hope that we see some announcements on more hackathons soon.
Absolutely. I like that idea. I mean, these could be really big challenges, like, hey, create an inter-blockchain communication solution for IBC that everybody's been trying to solve, or a massive thing
that would
they
be
give a big
awesome.
prize for.
Okay, so Upland, that's next in our notes. You want to introduce? Yeah, speaking of the hackathon, so you want to introduce what Upland is?
Yeah, so Upland is a new, if you haven't already seen, they just announced an investment from one of the EOS VC funds. They are a virtual property game built on EOS. And what's cool about this model, it's kind of similar to Infiniverse, except you're buying a plot of land in this digital world. I don't believe there's any augmented reality component, although there could be in the future. You know, all the details aren't out yet. But what's interesting is that they're actually doing it on a franchise basis. So they're starting with San Francisco as the first city where you can log into the game, either by walking around or just by moving around on your phone. You can buy property. it says you'll be able to earn a yield on it. I'm not sure how that'll work, if people can like lease the property from you, or maybe the game will just sort of give you a yield from some kind of inflation with their token. All of that is kind of unclear, but you'll be able to earn a yield and then obviously sell and trade those sort of proof of ownership of land. Obviously, it's just the digital land. You don't own the real land in the real world, but you'll be able to trade with other players. So it's pretty interesting. So for example, I'm here in Virginia. If in this city I wanted to turn my city into an Upland game, I could actually become an Upland franchisee, set up my own franchise, and then the game would be available here. So it's really interesting, the model that they're using here to kind of scale this out and make sure that there's a player base and somebody who can actually manage the game if necessary for that individual region. So it's kind of cool. We got access to the game. And we should actually have Dirk, one of the guys that we met at the hackathon, who's with the Upland team. We should have him on the podcast.
Yeah, so we have an interesting story behind this. We actually heard about Upland back at the San Francisco hackathon. Dirk, the guy in the picture here, he came up to us and he told us that he was planning to build on a different blockchain. And then he basically was thinking, he heard of EOS, and then he fell into the everything EOS trap and started watching us. He heard about EOS VC. He applied to EOS VC, he got it, and I think they're in the process of going through FinLab at that time, so it wasn't like public or even finalized yet. But we knew this game was coming for a long time, and Dirk's a great guy. We met him at B1 June again also. He was there, and I'm excited to see what they have going on. They have a beta in San Francisco, and like you said, it's very similar. Not very similar. It's kind of similar to Infiniverse, but it's an augmented reality game, and it's being compared to Monopoly on a lot of the news sites so far.
We got a real quick. We got a $20 super chat from Maurice. Thank you, Maurice. He says, "What is the status of the lobbying firm that has been hired by Block.One, and what should we expect?" So he's talking about Holland and Knight. And this is actually perfect timing because I talked with Rick, our financial advisor at Cypherglass, about this. And he said Holland and Knight is one of the biggest, most legitimate lobbying firms in the U.S. So essentially, this goes along with what Brendan has been saying, where they're trying to introduce positive regulation to regulators. They're trying to educate regulators on why blockchain technology can really do a lot of good for the U.S., for the citizens, for the government, for everybody involved. So I think Holland and Knight, they have the right connections, they have the right sort of infrastructure in place to really get that message out there to the proper people. So I think that's probably what they're using them for. But Holland and Knight, very, very legitimate. So I think B1.
So I actually had this in our notes to talk about in a little bit, so I'll just pull them up now. So this is what he was talking about. So I think The Block was the first to release the news, and then Cointelegraph came out, and then Yahoo Finance picked it up. But basically, EOS developer Block.One working with lobbying firm on blockchain issues. It's the company Rob mentioned. I'm not going to read this on screen. But I looked into who Scott Mason, like you know me, I'm always digging. So Scott Mason and, oops, I'll just pull up Scott Mason first once it loads. So I think he's the guy who, he's the main guy they mentioned in the article, but he was a member of Trump's campaign and transition teams. His responsibilities included establishing and maintaining U.S. House of Representatives relationships between the Trump campaign and the House, congressional endorsements for Trump, developing relations with members of Congress on policy interests, including tax reform, healthcare reform, transportation, energy. I think this, I'm trying to read through this. I didn't have time to put my highlights, but one of these two people, between him and the woman, they had a deep influence in the the transportation piece of the government, which stood out to me because if you guys remember on Telegram not too long ago, Dan was like hypothesizing, and I think this is just being forward thinking of an ideal scenario, but like what if we keep talking about these YubiKeys, but what if a YubiKey like chip could be embedded into your passport or into your driver's license? Like that would basically give a private and public key to every person in whatever country that was, whether it be the United States or Liberland or some country in between. But what would happen if you basically had a hardware key in your ID and it was basically on a public ledger, and you wouldn't have to manage the private key because it's basically it's embedded into the chip. But that's what stood out to me. I wish I had the information like highlighted so I could pull it up quickly without looking like a fool. But between those two lobbyists, between Scott Mason and Norma Krayem, one of them had some deep experience in the transportation industry. So I don't think like that's in the works or anything, but I think that's like the grand vision of things is have everyone have a hardware key, and in whatever country it is. And I think with the lobbyists, they're obviously shooting for the United States, but I'm sure it would be a huge win to have this in any country, not just the United States.
Absolutely. So I want to jump back to keep talking about augmented reality. Obviously, we talked about Upland, which is very cool. Like we said, we have a meeting with Dirk on Tuesday, so hopefully we'll be able to get him or some of the people from his team on the show to talk more about Upland and sort of the vision for it as it all expands. But there was another sort of augmented reality app called N-Blocks Hunt that EOSIO launched, which was pretty cool. But it looks also similar to Infiniverse. You can basically go around and my understanding of it is collect digital items like digital coins and things like that in the real world. So it seems most similar to Platin, which we also saw at the hackathon, where Platin had these iPads around and showed a demo where there were actual coins that looked like they were in the real space, in augmented reality when you move the iPad around that you could walk up to and claim. So, you could drop an EOS token there, or maybe if you're at Starbucks, you could drop a Starbucks token outside that gives you a discount or something like that and reward people for fun.
My computer bandwidth's like fried. I couldn't even play the video on the thing on the screen.
Yeah, your guy wouldn't try to play video on that until we get the new.
Oops, I got another window up. Okay, so man, this is going a lot slower than usual. Not only is it morning and I'm not all hyped up, but I'm like, I got a million things going on right now. So I appreciate you carrying the load here today, Rob. So
absolutely. Well, this is something I really want to talk about, what Dan has here. He says he wants a passport validation smart contract using NFC on Android and iOS 13. And if you didn't know, the reason why it says don't bend your passport is because there's an NFC chip in it that allows people to verify it is legitimate. So Dan mentioned, you could make the KYC on voice very easy using NFC. Imagine if all you have to do to KYC with voice is take your passport, tap it against your iPhone, and boom, you're verified because now they have all that data. It would be very cool.
Yeah, so that kind of goes in with what I said. Like they're going for the Department of Transportation. It seems like with their lobbyists, that's a good route to go. It's still very early. I'm not saying anything's done, but we can kind of get an idea of the direction they're going. And it's no surprise that they're building this Washington, D.C. office. So I can't remember the guy's name or his news organization, but he actually had an interview with Dan Larimer. So whenever we were in D.C., we interviewed Dan and Brendan. Then the two EOS Writer guys interviewed both of them. But then this guy, he only interviewed one of them. He interviewed Dan, and I'm not sure which interview it came from. Maybe it was the EOS Writer one, but they asked Brendan why they didn't bring up the Washington D.C. stuff, and he kind of like downplayed it, like it wasn't a big deal. But I think it is a big deal because, but the stuff he did say was that they're constantly working with governments and regulators, so it's just proximity. And then the other thing is the airport, so you could fly into Washington D.C. from basically anywhere in the world direct. So that's a convenience thing also for Brendan, is like he's flying from Hong Kong so he can get directly to DC, but to get to like Blacksburg, for example, he would have to land in JFK, then to get to Blacksburg. So there's that. I forget where I was going with this. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, what they're doing with the DC office. So Block.One, they're hiring an insane amount of cybersecurity experts and like security in general. And they're all in not all of them, but most of them are in the DC office, which leads me to believe that the best way that they're going to get a product used by actual government, and I'm not saying that it's going to be the United States, but the best way to do it is to build it first and then show them what you got, and then see if they want to approve it. Then I think Block.One has the R&D on point, and they're basically building these products before they're even approved or even a timeline on when they would get accepted by a country. And you can see where their ideas are. So I want a passport validation smart contract using NFC on Android and iOS. So that's where his mind's at. I don't know how long it's going to take to get them there, but we know like where his mind is at. They're hiring lobbyists. They're going to Washington. He's mentioned on Telegram embedding a chip. And then in here, when he's talking about bounties, he's talking about passport validations. And then on top of all of that, there was that tweet not too long ago where he said that EOSIO was tested successfully with 320 million accounts, which is the exact census number in the United States for the last census in 2010. It was 320 million U.S. citizens. So I mean, Dan's a great marketer. He probably knew that. It doesn't mean it's happening now, but it's what they want to happen, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Philip Maxwell has a really good point as well. He says, not everyone has a passport, though, and that's definitely true. My understanding, or I guess my prediction for what's going to happen with KYC on voice is that they're going to have a lot of different verification methods, because it's a little bit different in every country. You know, if you're in South Africa versus Europe, you might have a different KYC process than if you're in the US just tapping your passport against your phone. So I think it'll be different for everybody. And Mark says, let's hear your thoughts on Facebook Libra. I think we're going to wait until the actual details come out, but I think it's a very, very good thing. I would like to do a live stream next week, assuming that the Facebook details come out on Tuesday, and talk about sort of the impacts on the overall crypto space, the impacts on EOS. But once we know the details for sure,
I kind of want to talk about it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I like talking about stuff I don't have to look at all these screens about. I can talk on the fly about this.
Okay, so I think it is the best thing for crypto that's probably ever happened. And I know a lot of people will take some, maybe they disagree with that in a lot of ways, but here's why. And if you think about Facebook, the scope, the scale of Facebook, 2.5 billion people, that's a third of all humans that exist in the world today are on Facebook. If you give those 2.5 billion people an on-ramp into crypto, even if it's a centralized coin that's backed by fiat, you could call it one of the biggest shitcoins if you wanted, because it is backed by fiat, of course. Even with all of those things in mind, giving those people that on-ramp into crypto, and then potentially partnering with people like Coinbase, who is allegedly one of their partners for the 100 nodes in their system, all you have to do is have a Libra, which is the rumored name of Facebook's coin, Libra to Bitcoin pair, Libra to EOS pair, and suddenly you have the easiest on-ramp in the world for 2.5 billion people to enter crypto. I mean, I don't think there's anything more bullish than that for the overall crypto space, especially when you start giving people a new currency to spend. They go, why do I use the US dollar? And they start to question their own fiat currencies. And as we all know, as soon as you start doing that, all roads generally lead to crypto and Bitcoin. So it's really, really exciting.
Yeah,
I think on that?
So. We don't need to be maximalists here. Like, you don't have to love Facebook to understand that Facebook coin is a good thing. So I'm trying to pull up the screen here. So how could it be a bad thing to bring Uber, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard all into the mix, running full nodes on this network? I don't care what they're paying for it. Like, yeah, it's a ridiculous amount. They're all investing at least $10 million each, and I think Facebook's trying to raise $1 billion from all of their full nodes. Yeah, like, that might be ridiculous, but I don't really care. What I care about is that all of these big companies are buying in and happy to do so. So it's basically bringing in all the big players: Stripe, Booking.com. So if we have all of these I guess, roads, like the foundation of a blockchain-based ecosystem. So we could be over in EOS, but we're going to have trading pairs, like, with this Facebook coin. And then with that Facebook coin, you'll probably be able to use Stripe payments, which are available at almost every retailer you can go to. Well, not like... I don't know what I was saying about that, but I'm used to seeing it like food trucks and stuff, because you could put it on an iPhone, is what I'm saying. You could have them everywhere. I'm not saying that they're the registers at Walmart, but then Booking.com, like these big companies, MasterCard and Visa. So if this coin is being, if they're running full nodes at MasterCard and Visa, then you could assume that at some point this Facebook coin will be transactable through the Visa and MasterCard networks. Once you have that, you basically have your fiat on and off ramp, like without EOS having to do it. Like, EOSIO doesn't have to build that. I think they're building it on their own. I think everyone's building it on their own. Everyone's working in their own silos. But this is only going to help the ecosystem as a whole. And like you said, what bad could happen whenever you make crypto onboarding available and easy for 2 billion people? Like, I don't think there is any downside to that. What do you guys think in the chat? They said if voice needs to be KYC'd, then Facebook will definitely need to be KYC'd. I agree with that 100%.
Right, I think that will happen. Obviously, it's 2.5 billion accounts. We can't verify there are 2.5 billion people, but even if 1.5 billion of those are fake, that could be 1 billion real people that potentially have this on-ramp. And I totally agree with what everybody's saying, that, Facebook's worst company ever. I agree. I don't trust Facebook with my money. I certainly won't be using this product, but this product isn't for us. It's not for the people already in crypto. It's for the people, my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, who have heard about crypto. Maybe they're a little interested in it. They already have a Facebook account that they use every day. Boom, suddenly they have a payment option within it. Maybe they even allow you to set up your own wallet and start teaching people about that. But really, from a psychological standpoint, when you get billions of people to start transacting in a currency different from the currency of their government that they've used their entire life, it does something crazy in your mind. You start to think about, why do certain currencies have value? Why do I use the US dollar versus something else? And then you start to sort of go down that path to Bitcoin. So I'm super excited about it all and think it's going to do amazing things for the space. And I agreed. I retweeted a lot of stuff, people saying this could be the Netscape moment for crypto. I totally agree. Onboard 2 billion people into this system, and let's get this
I think
new
what we need to
revolution
happen
going.
is we need Facebook Coin to be a success with the people on Facebook who are not in crypto. And then we got to get them watching everything EOS, and then they'll be EOS people. So they'll leave Facebook really quick. Don't worry. It's all about like getting their toes wet, getting their feet in the water, and then it's game over from there. Get them into the ecosystem and give them ways to earn too. So think of it like what Bancor could do. Bancor can convert any Ethereum token into any EOS token, and they're going to be continuously adding more networks. So if I have Facebook coins from doing some game or some reward, I don't know how you will earn Facebook coins. I think they'll be transacted like stable coins. But let's say there is a way to earn within Facebook. Then what do you do with these Facebook coins? Well, you could probably buy in-game items with them. It's kind of introducing people to like blockchain-based gaming and owning your assets. You'll be able to swap those Facebook coins for any other token in existence through something like a Bancor. So I don't see a downside to this. I still don't really understand why there needs to be 1 million stable coins, even after meeting the Equilibrium guys, but I don't think it hurts anything. I think it's fine, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest ones. Do you think it's going to supplant Tether for the highest market cap of a stable coin? Me too.
Oh, absolutely. I think just with the sheer amount of people, the sheer amount of partners that are on board, I think it'll easily be the biggest market cap of a stable coin. And Scott says, his sister's cousin says, why would you want to use money you can't touch? 97% of all US dollars can't be touched either. They're just digital zeros in a bank account right now that you don't have control over, that a centralized party can just change or lock you out of at any moment. So most money today is already digital. It's just a matter of bringing it into a form like Bitcoin, for example, or like EOS that you can custody yourself and control, and somebody can't just come in and cut your access off. If you
here's the difference. Like think of a centralized exchange is kind of like a bank where you send your crypto, like let's say I deposit EOS into Binance. It goes into a big Binance like hot wallet with a memo field that has like an ID that's associated with my actual account. But all of that money is just sitting in one big account. And then everything from there, when I look at my balance on my balance screen on Binance, that's just a centralized database. That's just like the banking system is they have like their fiat reserves or whatever, fractional fiat reserves, and then it's just a centralized ledger. So it's already, like you said, you already don't see it or touch it. Like you're just trusting that the ledgers that the bank are managing are legit. Just like you're trusting an exchange to have all of the assets that it says it has. And that's why every year they do that proof of keys thing to kind of hold the exchanges accountable. So having all of these stable coins, even if like banks are like using them, that's great because then you have that transparency of what the banks actually hold in their reserves compared to what they have lended out everywhere and giving loans on top of loans. So I think it's only a good thing. Another thing that, sorry.
Well, real quick, just thinking about this from like the macro scale, I remember, in Bitcoin several years ago, people talking about any of this stuff like, oh, can you imagine one day when like these big companies will accept blockchain, maybe they'll come out with their own. All of these sort of conceptual thoughts were talked about many, many years ago in crypto. But if you had told me then, back in 2013, 2014, that Facebook would be launching their own blockchain, that JP Morgan would have a JPM coin, I would be like, no, there's no way that happened that quickly. But we're here. I mean, these major companies in the world, right, they're not making the most decentralized system. They're not making something that isn't backed by fiat. But that's besides the point because this is the biggest on-ramp ever to bring people into true crypto like EOS, like Bitcoin, like so many others. So I'm excited.
So did you see this? D-Goods and Shintai. It's something we knew was coming. With their whole lease everything model. It seems like Shintai 2.0 is starting to ramp up. I hope we start seeing more of the lease everything structure with leasing NFTs. So basically, if Rob has some $1 million sword that I can never afford, maybe he'll be able to lend it to me through Shintai, and I'll be able to just pay a fraction. Similar to think of the Rex. So with the Rex, you could pay 1 EOS, and you get literally like 3,000 to 4,000 EOS worth of CPU. but you're spending that EOS. Whereas if you actually own the 3,000 CPU, you'd be saving that 1 EOS, which is nominal right now. So it'll open up markets and allow assets, digital assets, in-game items, or artwork, or anything that could be done in NFT could have massive value that it holds, while still letting people to actually use it for its utility. So Rob might have the only sword in existence, and everyone wants to use it. Might not even be liquidity for it. Rob might just be like, I'm only selling this sword for $1,000 or $1 million. That's it. No one could buy it unless they have $1 million, but I'll rent it to you for this price. And he'll be able to do that through Shintai. He'll be like the market maker because he's the only one with that sword. So what are some other implications with once Shintai 2.0 goes live, and what you'll be able to do with it?
I mean, you're right in that it goes directly with their model of lease everything. And that's what I think is so cool about Shintai joining DGoods, is that they're bringing that capability. They're going to integrate the ability to lease anything through Shintai. So you can imagine, remember when we talked about DGoods DEX in a token, that decentralized exchange in a token, where you list it in one place and it sort of gets listed on every DGood compatible marketplace. The token itself can kind of be listed everywhere instantly. You can imagine the same thing applying to leasing, where I can go into my token and say, okay, I want to lease this for, $10 a week, this rare sword. Boom, it gets sent to Shintai. Boom, it gets sent to any other DGoods compatible marketplace. So this, I think, is awesome and really is going to add a lot of liquidity and a lot of interesting use cases that we probably can't even think about yet when it comes to digital goods and leasing digital goods and things like that. There was another partner as well, SenseChat, actually joining DGoods, and they're bringing digital stickers over to DGoods as well. So it was cool to see both of these people sort of come out. I just posted a video on Cypherglass about it yesterday as well. But they're both bringing something real, adding additional value to the DGood standard that then any developer can use for free, since DGood is a free and open source standard for digital goods on EOS. So it's great. It's just getting better and better.
Screen, so we might as well talk about it. Do you see that Lynx is releasing a desktop app? I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, it's exciting. It looks very similar to Scatter stuff that they've been coming out with. Obviously, very, very good UX. I'm excited for Lynx and sort of how they're going to expand. They're obviously ahead of the game when it comes to working with Apple's new guidelines, where Apple requires you to have the developer ID for every DApp that you automatically populate within a wallet app. So that changes it around a little bit, but they've always been ahead of it, always been ready to sort of adapt there. So shout out to
I'm excited. It's going to take a lot for me to move away from Scatter. I use EOS Lynx on my mobile wallet too, which I'm going to be kind of have a tough decision to make here of which desktop wallet application I'm going to use, because I love how simple Lynx's mobile wallet is. It reminds me of Venmo. It's great for just transacting. For games, yep. I kind of lean towards Token Pocket though a little bit, because they have an embedded browser within Token Pocket, so I could actually use this web browser within Token Pocket to go to like Kylan testnet apps and stuff and run them through like a browser. So it's a little bit more flexible with that. But with desktop, I mean, I don't know of anyone but Scatter. Greymass is working on a wallet. I haven't tried that one yet. Have you? The Anchor?
No, I haven't. I still actually use their old EOS Voter wallet for some stuff, but mostly use Scatter on desktop, and then, of course, Token Pocket.
Where are we at on the notes? This is like the most dead we've ever been for a podcast. So I apologize to everyone watching. I hope the animations make up for it though, because I'm kind of all over the place here. This thing's pretty cool. Check this out. It's my Stream Deck. This is what I'm using to control some of this stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks awesome. I feel like you always think you're more all over the place than you actually are, because from my perspective, at least, I think it's been a great show, especially for a Saturday
I guess,
morning.
Rob, if you say so. What? Oh, so I just have a bunch of random links in our notes here. What'd you think of the EOS 42? They put out a current state of delegated proof of stake research article. Have you had a chance to dive deep into that?
I have, yeah. I thought it was super interesting, and shout out to EOS 42 for putting all the time and effort and due diligence into that. I did notice they're going to go back and update some things for like IOST that were incorrect, just to make that more accurate. But overall, the report was really well done and sort of gives a little bit more data into all these decisions that we're trying to make about, is the current voting system good? Should we modify it in some way with quadratic voting or inverse weighted voting? There's all these different systems floating around and that people have ideas on.
I didn't even know they were working on this. So I like surprises like this. This was a great read, but like you said, there were a few inaccuracies, but it wasn't inaccurate because they didn't do their research. It's just anything in blockchain. It's like if you're not in the community, everything's like so complex. Like try explaining Rex to your mom and tell her like what it's doing. Like it's really hard to do. So especially with like the incentives for doing certain things. I actually joined not the IOST, but iOS the Liobe channel for Telegram, which is Peter Keay. He has a node with some people that we used to work with at ICO Alert. They run a node, and they have their own Telegram channel, and I was answering some questions about EOS because everyone in the IOST community was up in arms about whatever data was wrong on this. And then they had a bunch of questions about EOS, and I was kind of explaining it to them. And it was nice to get perspective of what other people in other communities think and have lack of understanding on. And a lot of their questions were based on the 4% inflation we have that does nothing. It just goes into an account, and we've burned it once, and we plan to burn it again occasionally. And then having to explain like why we don't just turn it off if we're not using it. And I'm like, well, there might be a use for it. We don't want to turn it off. It'll be hard to turn back on. And having to explain like why we burned like $130 million worth of EOS, and it was nice to get that perspective and get that refreshing feeling of talking to people that understand blockchain deeply and crypto in general, but they don't know EOS. So just having and having them not be just like fudding about it and just asking legitimate questions. So it was cool for me to get to answer some of those questions for the people in the inside IOST/Liobe Telegram channel. So what else came out this week? We had some other stuff. EOS New York put out a pretty good article about faking transactions. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. This I thought was great. I mean, it was a response to Anchain.ai. They had a report, and then there was a bunch of media coverage saying basically that most of the top 10 DApp volume on EOS, all of that volume, those users were faked. And EOS New York had a really, really great sort of response to that, a rebuttal that sort of showed, hey, you know, a significant amount of it maybe is bots, but it's actually real users. There's a cost to those transactions, and even went to disprove a lot of their claims. So it's a great article that I think people should check out if you haven't already. We'll post a link to it in the chat here. I think we're getting. I know we should.
We're going slow. I'm like digging for stuff. Like our notes, basically. I spend a lot less time on our notes than I usually do. Actually, I only have you on the screen right now. Also, I spent a lot more time messing around with this software than I did following EOS this week. So I apologize to everyone for that. But I have Rob as my crutch, so I'm sure it wasn't.
Well, honestly, I think we did cover a lot of news. I mean, a lot of stuff happened this week. That Hello EOS AMA coming out early this upcoming week is going to be exciting. So there's a lot to look forward to when the Facebook news finally breaks. I think we'll get on and talk about that in more detail as well. But anything else to add?
So I guess what people have to look forward to here. So next week we have a call with Dirk from FinLab, or not FinLab, but from Upland. We're going to probably bring him on the podcast to tell his story. Like literally this project, like he was going to probably do it regardless, but the fact that he's in the EOS ecosystem and he got funding from FinLab, it's just really cool how we have a personal tie into that, even though we didn't even know the guy until the project was half built and he was in the hackathon in San Francisco back in November. So I think that's a really cool story that we're going to get to tell. Besides that, today's the deadline for the DSP portals for DApp Network. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've seen, I should probably pull some up. Why don't you talk for a minute, and I'm going to pull up some of these DSP portals.
Yes, a lot of people know we put out that $100,000 EOS hardware wallet bounty from Cypherglass. This is a bunch of money from the partners at Cypherglass. It doesn't come from Block Rewards. But we put up this $100,000, and it was very successful. 2 months after that bounty was put out, the Ledger hardware wallet support came out. We picked the winner. They got 50 grand of it. And for the last 10 months, actually more now, we've been looking at, okay, who's going to submit the $50,000 portion for the Ledger bounty? And we haven't had any submissions still. So we announced a couple days ago, earlier this week at Cypherglass, that we're going to take that 50 grand for the Trezor bounty, retire the Trezor bounty, and actually repurpose that 50 grand to multiple other smaller bounties. So that post went out on Medium. And also on Decentium, which is a very cool new publishing platform built on EOS that we're publishing on Decentium.org. But we should have the first bounty announcement here in the next couple weeks that we're going to be funding. So we think we can do a lot of good that's way more relevant than a Trezor bounty since we haven't gotten any submissions for that. So stay tuned for more.
I keep forgetting to remove this live chat whenever I do this transition. Anyway, Yeah, so
good.
Liquid Apps, we had a bounty that has been going on for like the last month. So we've had a lot of questions. We have the air huddle going on, which I could talk about in my Telegram channel or in the Liquid Apps Telegram channel if you want to talk about that. But there's been a lot of questions of like, how do I stake to a DSP? How do I compare the DSPs? And how do I do all these functions that previously you had to go to Blocks.io or another block explorer and click all the functions manually. And what the plan was this bounty was going on because we wanted a distributed choices, basically, similar to like block explorers. So with block explorers, you could use like EOS X, you could use blocks, you could use EOS Authority. There's a bunch of different options for block explorers, but we wanted to have a similar model for the DSP portals. So what we did was we put out a bounty for 1.5 million DApp tokens and that's going to be split up among the top 3 winners of this contest. And today's the last day for people to submit it. You had to already enter. And a couple of them have already been public. So this one's EOS Nations. This one's really nice. All the really cool stuff's whenever you click up here, but I don't want to spend too long on any one of these. Malta Block put out a nice one. I like the dark design. I'm a big fan of any dark designs. And what it does is it lets you compare the packages, see what you're getting, compare the DSPs, got a bunch of filters. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a huge upgrade from what we had. And even Blocks.io. So they released like a portal alpha about a week or 2 ago so that people could at least have some advanced functionality. But they added more advanced filters to theirs, and they submitted for the contest. And who else did it? So everyone that got their links in early, congratulations, because I'm showing everyone your tools here. DSPHQ.io also put theirs out. And there's many more. But the winners for that contest, I'm not sure of the exact time that'll be out, but look for it time probably in the next week or so. But that's exciting. Is anyone looking to use DApp Network, mostly developers, that's who it's the most valuable for. We've been getting questions of people asking what the token's for. Well, it's for a utility. If you're not developing something, I mean, HODL is really the use case for you. But it's meant to be a utility token to get services on the EOS Mainnet, like different oracles. We have an IBC oracle. So much cool stuff. Liquid accounts are going to be huge. So I meant to bring this up now that it's public was ORID is actually going to be so ORID, for those who aren't familiar, ORID is the best onboarding tool for like new users into EOS. You could basically create an EOS account using your Facebook login, your LinkedIn login, your Twitter login, any kind of OAuth authorization. You could create an EOS account, and they do on the back end. They have like a different EOSIO chain that's managing just the accounts, and then it interlinks with the mainnet. But they're developing some new technology that's going to take advantage of the DApp network, and they're building like a hybrid solution where they're going to be using liquid accounts on the back end, but ORID on the front end. And I think they're planning to run a DSP themselves that's going to offer that service. So anyone who wants to onboard users onto their DApp, and you've been looking at ORID, it's going to get even better here soon. So I'm pretty excited about that. So shout out to ORID and the team at Icon, and look for that soon. I think that's it for my stuff, Rob.
Yeah, I think that's it for me as well. I think that's a good place to wrap up. You ready to close it out?
We could try, yeah. I'm going to see if I can turn the music back on. I don't know if it's playing or not, but it might be playing. I think there's music playing, so I think we're ready to close off. I'll see you guys in a couple days. We'll probably be doing a live stream early in the week. I'm not sure the day yet, but we'll let you know in the Telegram channel. But until next time, I'm Zack Gall.
I'm Rob
Finch.
And this
is Everything EOS.
Is Everything EOS.
Go EOS.
Go EOS. Leave a Go EOS in the chat. Smash the thumbs up.